It was another ordinary morning in the small town of Pine Creek. The sun hadn't risen high yet, and the local gun shop sat nestled between a bait store and an old hardware warehouse. You wouldn't have guessed it, but that old shop held more stories than any other in the town. Its windows were tinted just enough to hide the past, while inside the shelves displayed rifles and handguns gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. Jack Turner, with his worn boots and a jacket older than most of the staff, stepped through the door at 10:43 a.m. His cane clicked softly on the worn tile floor as he moved toward the counter, his limp as much a part of him as the cap he wore, a faded Navy SEAL emblem still visible after all these years. He didn't demand attention, he never did. But something about his presence made the room fall quieter. The young clerk behind the counter glanced up, his eyes barely leaving the screen of his phone. "Need something, sir?" he asked, a forced smile playing on his lips. Jack nodded slowly, his hand gently resting on the glass counter. "I was wondering if you still carry the M1 Garand replica," he said, his voice calm but firm. "The real stock model." The clerk, confused, hesitated. "That's a collector's item, sir, not really meant for firing. You sure you want to?" "I didn't ask to fire it," Jack replied, his voice unwavering. "Just want to hold it. Haven't touched one in decades." The second clerk, younger and brash, snickered. "Yeah, Pops, that rifle's heavy. Maybe a bit much for your back, huh?" Jack didn't flinch. He simply looked at the clerk, his eyes hardening. "I used to carry one across jungles," he said quietly. "I can manage it across a showroom." "That's when it happened?" The first clerk laughed, his voice too loud. "Okay, Rambo, you're just taking up space. Let the real customers in, huh?" The second clerk added, "Yeah, we're not a museum, Grandpa." The old man didn't respond. Instead, he looked down at the counter for a moment, then turned and walked out the door, his cane clicking on the tile. No arguments, no raised voices, just a man alone, walking away from a place that didn't know his worth. But what the clerks didn't know was that the man they just dismissed wasn't just anyone. His name had weight. His legacy carried more than they could understand. 2 minutes after Jack left, a woman in her mid-30s standing near the ammo rack took out her phone. She made one call, 3 words, then slipped back into the quiet shadows. At 11:43 a.m., the parking lot outside the gun shop began to change. A matte dashback SUV rolled in, the engine humming quietly. A second and a third followed. No music, no fanfare, just silence. Inside, the clerks were still scrolling through their phones, unaware. Then the doors opened. One by one, 12 men stepped into the shop. Their movements were deliberate, their presence commanding. No one said a word, but you could feel the weight of their silence. They spread out, forming a semicircle, and their eyes locked on the young clerks, who were still too lost in their phones to realize what was happening. The eldest of the men stepped forward, graying hair and a square jaw. The SEAL trident on his chest shined in the store's fluorescent light. "An hour ago," he said, his voice low but commanding, "one of us walked through this door." He didn't yell. He didn't need to. "You laughed, called him Grandpa, told him to leave. You didn't ask who he was. You didn't care." The man placed something on the counter. A scorched flag patch, worn and folded, was placed in front of the clerks. "He carried me out on foot in Helmand," the man continued. 22 hours, no radio, no backup, just him, a hole in his side the size of a fist, and a mission to finish. He never asked for thanks. He never told anyone. But when he came in here today, you treated him like a problem. The young clerk's face went pale. He couldn't speak. The weight of those words had struck him deep. The oldest man nodded toward the counter. Another SEAL stepped forward, placing a photo. A group of men, arms slung over each other's shoulders, smiling despite the dust and hardship. Jack Turner, younger then, was at the center of it all. The clerk swallowed. The truth was in front of him now, and it was too late to take back what had been said. Without a word, the SEAL team turned and left, their silence heavier than any bullet. The photo went viral within hours. The name, Jack Turner, became known. The man who was once invisible to the world was now impossible to ignore. By the afternoon, the gun shop had become a place of reflection. Veterans began visiting, not to buy weapons, but to remember, to honor, to reflect. And Jack Turner, he never changed his routine. He still walked his morning route. He still sat at the same diner, his coffee black with no sugar. But now, when people looked at him, they didn't just glance past him. They saw him. The SEALs didn't need to say anything. They had shown the world what loyalty, respect, and brotherhood looked like. And Jack, he knew exactly who he was, whether the world acknowledged him or not.